to have you tonight. Listen, there are already rumors that your governor, Gavin Newsom, wants to run in 2024, and he came to the White House yesterday, and Biden wasn't even there. Do you think he's sizing up the place? Maybe going to do a little redecorating when he thinks he's going to move in?
Thanks for having me on. Of course, he's testing the waters. He knows Biden's out of town. Good time for him to look presidential. Crime, homeless bums, invasion, and taxation will plague him all the way through the race. He's very vulnerable on those issues, except in the state of California, which is a one-party propaganda state. No one ever criticizes him for crime, homeless bums, invasion, and taxation. By and large, he's gotten a free pass. When he gets into the national arena, these issues, in addition to the scandal of the French Laundry, will haunt him. Now, we should also say this about Gavin. Gavin, and I've known him for a very long time. He's come to my birthday parties. I kind of like Gavin Newsom as a person, but that's not the point. He's a far-left activist who will bring extremely far-left policies to the United States that may be to the left even of Joe Biden. He also has a couple of strikes against him. He's white, he's heterosexual, he's married to a beautiful woman, and he has beautiful children. Those are 5 strikes and you're out in this America, aren't they? If it was not, those are not attributes anymore. It's not the age of John F. Kennedy. So
we've seen how that worked out for President Trump.
Yeah, but I think he's going to run because there's a vacuum. Kamala will likely, in my estimation, and that of anyone studying this, see the presidency sooner rather than later because Biden is stumbling. I've said it before. It's very sad to watch. Anyone who has had any experience in senility and studying senility, you ask any expert. It goes like this on a downward spiral, and then there's a drop like that. Joe, unfortunately, is very close to the cliff. He's talking to ghosts. He's shaking hands with invisible people. He says the Holocaust should be... I never heard anything like this. It's
well, you watch him in that clip, and you watch his handlers around him, and the way they're looking, it's like they're bracing and making sure he's not going to trip and fall. Obviously, there's a lot of people in his inner circle that are very concerned and want to keep him very close and keep him following his notes so he doesn't make any mistakes. But Michael, I do want to ask you too, there's obviously some other names being thrown around, not just Gavin Newsom, and Politico suggested that Jon Stewart, the former host of The Daily Show, that he should run in 2024. I mean, do you think either party is going to move that far away from politics for their next leader?
I have one comment about Jon Stewart. I remember very clearly when his writers went on strike, they had to shut the show down for 3 or 4 days because this guy is a complete and total empty suit. Empty. He's an empty dummy. A clothing dummy has more integrity and intelligence than Jon Stewart. Never forget what I said, audience. When Jon Stewart's writers went on strike, the show went off the air. Everything this dummy has ever said has been written for him by very smart people. He's a zero. Maybe that makes him a perfect candidate for the Democrats. Perhaps that's the reason.
Well, there's other options out there. Hillary's name has been floated around. Howard Stern, another entertainer, has said that he might throw his hat in the ring.
I mean, his wig in the ring.
It's not looking so good for the Democrats if this is the best they have.
If Howard Stern threw his wig in the ring, that would be a hilarious beginning to a great campaign. But you raised the issue of Hillary. I hear that Madame Tussauds Wax Museum of Horrifying Women just created a new figure in her name. The other women they've mentioned in the series that she's doing, Kim Kardashian, her and her daughter are doing a docu-series now to promote her candidacy. Kim Kardashian is a waste of human DNA who's destroyed womanhood. Gloria Steinem destroyed America's women in this country. Wanda Sykes, Amy Schumer, Goldie Hawn, and Kate Hudson. My God, these are women who have put Lady Godiva to shame. They're basically strippers pretending to be politicians. So who is left on the Democrat side? That's the interesting part. There aren't too many people who can really run and attract any attention. Gavin, by the way, would be a very viable candidate for them.
And I think the legacy media is going to be in love with him.
Well, yeah, and they're going to forget all of the issues that I raised. Crime, homeless bums, invasion, and taxation. I'll be very honest. I have sent emails to Gavin and said, if you don't solve this crime problem in California and the homeless problem in California and the criminal taxation in California and the invasion from the southern border in California, Gavin, don't pack your bags.
Michael, Democrats have got a lot of work cut out for them. It's always a pleasure to have you, my friend. Michael Savage, everyone.
He should run on a Democrat ticket. That's who should run.
This guy.
Yeah.
I love it. Michael.
Yeah, I brought it just because you like props. So
I like your props. You always have it.
Lobster liberals would vote for him. The latte liberals would vote for him.
Does this guy work for the French Laundry?
There you go. You're 10 steps ahead of me. That's what I was thinking. Goodbye, Pierre.
Goodbye, Michael. They're going to kill me if I don't leave it there, but we'll see you next Thursday.
Always fun. Thank you again.
Always a pleasure. Thank you. Joining me now is the host of the Michael Savage Show podcast, Dr. Michael Savage. Michael, great to see you on this Thursday. You know, the left, they seem obsessed with trying to rewrite history, which is why they're pushing CRT.
These people are the most dangerous losers in the history of this nation. Jen, thanks for having me on. This whole myth of meritocracy that they're teaching that merit and individualism is an example of whiteness. These are sick, demented losers. I'll make it simple. Here's a model. I know you like props. It's
You have a prop this week. I'm so glad.
There you go. FA-18 Hornet, Blue Angels airplane. Who do you think becomes a Blue Angel pilot? Someone who struggles to beat the other great pilots. Someone with great individualism. Someone who has great merit in the ability to fly these things within a few feet of the next airplane in formation. If these psychopaths are not stopped and shut up, we'll reach a point where the airplanes will not have pilots, never mind in the military. You'll have no one being able to fly an airplane. No one will be able to pilot a Navy ship. A surgeon will not know which arteries to cut or not to cut. It is total and absolute madness. CRT is not only racist.
Michael,
yeah.
Go ahead. Don't let me cut you off.
It's not only madness. Who is driving this racist stuff? That this is based on whiteness, the ability to succeed to fly a plane like this. Turn it back on these fools. That's whiteness? Well, let's talk about the NFL. Who rises to the top of the NFL? The best football players. Based on what? Merit and individualism and the desire to beat the other guy. Who is it who beats the other man in a boxing match? Whether it's Muhammad Ali in his day or whoever it is today. Who was it? The man who wants to beat the other man through merit and individualism. These people are maniacs. They're sick. They're dismantling the United States of America, and every parent needs to speak out the way I'm speaking out tonight on the Jen Pellegrino show. I cannot take this anymore. It's insanity.
Hey,
Jen's crazy.
I like that new title. That's a good one, Michael. But you know, what's it going to take though to you see parents obviously speaking out, they're voting. What's it going to take to turn this around and eradicate this CRT that's invading all aspects of our lives?
By not being intimidated by these losers. They never belonged in the university system to begin with. I said this 20 years ago. Once you let people into a university who didn't get there based on merit, once they can't keep up, they'll start screaming it's racist because they can't keep up. So what you do is you lose all your ability to do chemistry, mathematics, physics, the hard sciences, and you have this garbage being taught as an actual legitimate subject when it is not. It is nothing but destructive ideology. The day will come, and people listening to this show should pay close attention to me. I've had this prayer book with me since I'm 13 years old, given to me by my grandmother. The day will come, if it hasn't come already, where these losers will declare that the Bible is an example of whiteness. It's an example of whiteness and privilege, and the book should be burned because it's only for white men. These people are sick, but they're dangerous. How do you stop them? By getting in their face and telling them to shut up. Ask them about the NFL. Ask them about who succeeds as a fighter. Ask them who
So
will
you're
fly
saying
our
they
airplane.
need to take the Maxine Waters approach. Get in their faces.
Who is she? She just jawbones everybody with her big mouth and scares everybody with her big mouth. People have big mouths. They can get in her face and tell her to shut up. Who's going to fly the airplane she flies on tomorrow if she keeps this up? And you know, here's another little story people don't know. Fidel Castro, dictator, murderer, all-around bad guy, Cuban dictator. You know, when he got sick, he didn't use Cuban doctors. He flew Jewish doctors in from the University of Miami. That's what CRT was in Cuba. People know reality, but they're putting up with this garbage because they're afraid of the Maxine Water big mouths. I have a lot more to say, and we are facing
Michael?
very dangerous times.
We are, and I hope to continue this conversation with you next week because unfortunately we've run out of time. Michael, you know it's always a pleasure. And 2 props tonight versus 1. We appreciate you so
Ask for
much.
them. Blue Angels, nobody will be able to fly
You
them.
always deliver, my friend. Every time. Have a great night. Let's bring in a best-selling author and host of the Michael Savage podcast, which is available on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, and other podcast platforms. Dr. Michael Savage, it's great to have you back this Thursday.
What a crazy week this is. It's like comedy, tragedy. This woman, I never heard of her, but I watched it, never heard of her, watched it. I thought she was lying from the get-go. So while I was watching it live, Jen, I started tweeting. And here was my immediate reactions. Breaking news. Trump threw his sandwich at the wall during Capitol riots. New crime against the state. And then I said, January 6th is a day that will live in infamy. Not because of the events of that day, but for the Stalinist show trial run by the most corrupt politicians in U.S. history. Never before have I ever seen only witnesses for the prosecution. Dems have now become the USSR. And I asked my middle-of-the-road followers, would you want no defense counsel if accused? And they said, well, the Republicans were invited, they could have appeared. Who would appear before a kangaroo court when there were no chance, there was no chance for them to ever be heard, number one. But as far as this Hutchinson goes, she should be held in contempt of Congress. There should be an investigation as to the veracity of her statements. And if it turns out she was bald-faced lying, she should face all of the legal consequences. That is what the Republicans should be doing. I don't know if they are.
Michael, do you think we'll hear from those Secret Service agents that say, you know what, Trump didn't grab the wheel, none of this happened?
Look, Jen, the night before the hearing, the chief of security mysteriously died by natural causes, we heard. And I said, oh my God, here we are again. And his testimony prior to that, I think on videotape, was there were outside agitators who were behind most of the riots. How did he die all of a sudden the night before this hearing? Are we living in a banana republic or worse? Well, do I have to ask you that? They're letting the border be overrun. They're prosecuting people who defend themselves and letting criminals run wild in the streets. The world is upside down under this Biden gang. There's nothing else to say about it, Jen. It's a gang. It is not an administration. And he's all over the map. He has pre-senile dementia. And it's very sad to watch. I was in the Alzheimer's research area. I've talked to people who are. He shows every sign of pre-senile dementia. Mixes up Switzerland with Sweden. No other president would ever get away with this. But what's waiting in the wings? The cackler. Boy, are we in trouble for the next 3 years.
We're in a lot of trouble, Michael. I mean, well, now they're saying Hillary Clinton might run. So who knows at this point?
That. You're wheeling her back out of Madame Tussauds Museum of Presidential Candidates. Where'd they get her? How could
the
she
best they've
do
got.
this? That's the best they've got. Well, I guess they better flood America with another 10 million illegal aliens before the presidential election if they want Hillary to win, because I think they're the only ones that fall for her ass.
You know what? That might backfire on them, though. Look at his approval rating with Hispanics right now. I think it's about 26%.
That's with Hispanics who are here already. I speak with them. They're hardworking people. They don't want this new wave of individuals being brought over for 1,000 reasons. We have a busted out economy. Everyone knows people are suffering. How are we going to house, feed, clothe all these millions of people that the left wing fanatics are bringing into the country? This doesn't take a conservative to answer. This takes a reasonable person to answer. Your family is going hungry. They can't put gas in their car, so bring in 20 people into your household.
Well, that's how it is. Michael, I don't have much time left with you, but I know every week you usually have a prop, and I'm usually cutting you off at that time. Do you have anything for us tonight? You look like you're in a different location.
I am. If I had only known Jen was going to say prop, I had one before. I was going to bring out some props from the old days of collecting plants in the South Pacific, but they didn't look right next to the formal painting behind me. But I swear to you, next time I'll get your props. Sorry about that.
Sounds great.
I need time to run around
we
here and
always
get you the
appreciate
props.
it. We always learn something every time you come on, Michael. Michael Savage, always appreciate you. Thank you.
Another happy Thursday with Jen and Michael. Thank you very much.
Indeed. We'll see you next week. And happy 4th of July.
Thank you, too.
Joining me now is a California native and friend of the show, the host of the Michael Savage Show podcast, Dr. Michael Savage. So good to see you, Michael.
Well, hi, Jen. It's another thrilling Thursday. I think there's a song in that one. So I live in the city. I love this city. I still love this city. I went in there on Father's Day on my boat, and you try to love it. But mixed into all of it, you see the underbelly of it. And I was searching articles. This caught my eye. The criminal order beneath the chaos of San Francisco's Tenderloin. So we all think that these homeless encampments and the robbing out of the stores like CVS or the stores around there is all happening by chance, but it isn't. The investigative reporter I found that I interviewed for tomorrow's podcast, Leighton Woodhouse, is one of the only investigative reporters I have seen in my time. He actually investigated this and has found that there are, he calls this overlapping transnational organized crime networks. And I said, what the hell how does a guy write this stuff? He actually figured it all out. And he said, everyone knows this. So it's not just the people in the camps. It's not just the random robbing in the Rite Aids and the other stores. It's actually organized. And he says there's 4 main groups. The boosters, they're the homeless and the drug addicts who steal from the local stores. We all see them. But they don't keep the goods. They then sell this to the street fences who buy the stolen goods. And then there are the dealers who sell them drugs for the money they make from the fences. And then he says, listen to this, Jen. At the top of the stack, there's the drug cartel that supplies the dealers and the wholesale fences that resell the goods acquired. It's a complicated story. And he said, everyone knows this. I'm quoting now. The cops, the mayor, the DA, everyone knows it's organized and cartel backed. They just don't think it's worth it to stop it because nothing's going to change anyway. So what we have are zones that are lawless in the midst of our cities with people like that defecating on the streets. If this is not an example of a debased, destroyed society, I'd like to know what is. Jen, this has to stop.
And Michael, you said last week on this show that you don't believe it's going to get any better when Mayor London Breed appoints a new DA.
You remember very clearly. I asked the reporter who knows the city really well, Leighton, I said, do you think that the mayor is going to do someone even worse than Chesa Boudin? And he said, she knows which way the wind is blowing, and she's not going to do that, even though she might have instincts to do so. He thinks that they will appoint someone who used to be a DA in the city who actually does the job of a district attorney, not someone representing the criminals, but someone who represents the people. That's what he said. And I have to say that this reporter, Leighton Woodhouse, you ought to have him on your show. You know, when do you have a guest telling you to have another guest on? He's a young guy, an investigative. He's a real great investigative reporter. And I was shocked that the man has the guts, Jen, to actually do this story. I said, aren't you afraid for your life? You're talking about the cartels behind it all? And he says, well, I don't know. I mean, this is a crazy story because he talks about transnational organized crime behind what we think is just random drug addicts breaking into pharmacies and stealing stuff. I was shocked when I read it. I did a whole podcast on it, tomorrow's podcast. I never promote my podcast. Everyone has to listen to this one.
All
Unbelievable
right,
story
listen
out
to
there.
listen to Michael's podcast, Michael. We always run out of time too quickly. I wish we had a whole hour with you, Michael Savage. We'll continue this conversation next week, and as always, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Another thrilling Thursday with Jen Pellegrino. I wrote it just for the show.
Well, thank you, my friend.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
Joining me now to discuss is National Radio Hall of Famer, the host of the Michael Savage podcast, Dr. Michael Savage. He's also the author of the book, Our Fight for America, The War Continues. Dr. Savage, great to see you as always. So we know that Boudin, the guy who you wanted gone as much as anybody else, he's out. Now, what about George Gascon? Will this recall be successful, or is L.A. a little bit of a different animal here?
Logan, thanks for having me. Look, there's only one answer to this. I watch your show. I see them flooding America with illegal aliens. You know most of them don't belong here. We know most of them are going to contribute nothing to this society. We know most of them are going to be leeches on this society. We see DAs who take the side of criminals. We see cops are killed in LA, and we get this shocking story that Gascon passed a law. No one will believe this, Logan. LA County will pay for the cop killers' funerals. Did you know this? Nobody could believe this. The gangster, the cartel gangster who killed 2 cops last week, will have a funeral paid for by LA County because of this wonderful human being, George Gascon. Now, let me give you some background on this character. This guy was once the DA of San Francisco. He was run out of the city on a rail because he destroyed the police department. Whatever he did to this city, he just did to LA. Who is he? How does one man destroy one city and then go to another without going to jail? Nobody will look into that. Nobody will look into who is behind Gascon. And as I have said before, without law, there can be no order. These are lawless, criminal people. Why do we treat them with such dignity like they're some respected figure because they have the word DA behind their name? Who is he? Who put him in power? Now, if you start investigating who put him in power, that he can decimate a police department and cause such chaos and mayhem in San Francisco, and then instead of being put in prison, he goes to LA and with monies, no one knows who gave him the monies, Soros is part of it, but not all of it, other forces in LA put him into the DA's office in LA, and all of a sudden, cop killings, follow home robberies, beatings in Beverly Hills, beatings in restaurants, and to top it off, the cherry on the cake, we learned just yesterday that according to Gascon's own laws, George Gascon's directive makes LA County pay for the cop killer's funeral. I swear to you, I'm
It's
not making this
unbelievable.
up.
It's
Corporal Paredes is dead. Officer Joseph Santana is dead. Killed by this gangbanger. And now the people of the city are going to have to pay for the gangbanger's funeral. What will that do to the hearts of the dead officers? How much more can this country take of these left-wing scum? They are criminals. They're not equal to the rest of us. People won't look behind the picture. All they say is Soros funded them. That's not good enough. There's much more to this picture than meets the eye. It's criminal gangs putting them in office, in my opinion. Do I have proof to that effect? Of course not. I'm not an investigative reporter, but I've studied enough history to know something more is behind this picture than meets the eye. Look, just this week, you see these pictures you're running of these smash and grab robberies? These are organized gangs that are run. There's a great story on this, came out in San Francisco, great reporter. These are run by organized criminal gangs. And when they rob the stores, they don't use the stuff. They get a certain amount of money per item, then it's fenced up the hill, and then it's sold.
Yeah,
and
they got
money
a
is
pawn
made
shop.
off it.
It's like a pawn business
So
that they're running.
So you have to ask, does it go uphill? Does any of that money that's being stolen in the streets go up to congressmen and women? Excuse me? Does it go up to senators? It can't happen here. It happened in Mexico, didn't it? Until the people took to the streets and overthrew the cartel-placed mayors and governors of various districts of Mexico. Do I have to go any further? Because as far as I can tell, If I were writing a novel, that's what's happening in the United States of America. They have taken over the United States, and that's who these DAs are. And that's my guess. Do I have proof? No. But remember this, Logan. When all else fails, people say, how did they do this? Why did they do this? Why did they flood America? Why do we spend billions of dollars on Ukraine when no one knows where Ukraine is? There's only one answer for all of this, Logan. Liberalism is a mental disorder. They are mentally disordered. Whether it's the trans in sports, pretending to be women so they can beat women, and we're supposed to say, oh no, they're equal to women. They're not equal to women. These are men faking it, making believe they're women to beat women in sports. Common sense. Why? Liberalism. I wrote this book 20 years ago. Pardon me for seeing what was going on then.
Definitely ahead of your time, Dr. Savage.
I may look a little older, but my brain is still younger.
Now, I'll mention one more quick crime thing before we get into our next segment. Now, a man who was going 100 miles per hour, shooting at police, was an illegal immigrant who was deported 7 times. So, again, if you're a citizen, a lot of these people are getting out of jail 10, 40 times for violent offenses. 7 deportations, this guy finds his way to Minnesota. But I want to talk about this scenario where a man drove his car into a Trump store. This, is being called a crash. It seems like it was intentional. Barreled right through a Trump store. My question to you is, do you think this was a hate crime or a politically motivated terrorist?
Well, I don't know who was driving the car. I mean, I saw the story, but who actually was the perpetrator of the crash?
Well, here's the bumper stickers, Dr. Savage. These are the left-wing bumper stickers. Donald Trump on the back, basically saying he commits atrocities. So it was clear that there was a political edge to this person.
Isn't that an Antifa symbol on on a car?
It looks like a double anarchist symbol there. That's what it looks like.
Okay, so the anarchists are behind it. They're a criminal organization. Biden's friends are in the Antifa movement. So the answer is, look uphill, not downhill. It's all coming from above. Remember the old adage, a fish rots from the head down. And the fish that's running this country has a head that's rotted a long time ago, let alone today. Fell off his bicycle, you hear? Well, we wish him a speedy recovery. But he doesn't belong on a bicycle. He belongs in a chair in an old age home with a blanket on himself before he does more damage to the world. So a fish rots from the head down. He's in cahoots with illegal aliens, drug smugglers, human smugglers, in cahoots with terrorists, in cahoots with psycho babblers, in cahoots with people who pretend to be men in order to beat men and pretend to be women to beat women. This is a sick, degenerate government. I don't have no other words for it. Make believe you're in a house with me. What would I say to you? These people are mentally sick. Unfortunately, Logan, they're running the world. One last point. Ukraine. So we send all this equipment to Ukraine, allegedly, right? Now, as your last guest talked about, war is brewing with China. Are we going to have to go to Ukraine and buy them from Zelensky? Or do you think Zelensky will lend them back to us in a Lend-Lease program? I can guarantee you, knowing Zelensky and his pals, they'll charge us triple what we gave them for nothing in order to get howitzer shells back. And bunker fuel. How about bunker fuel, Logan, for our ships? Old Joe the bicyclist is draining our strategic oil reserve. Does anyone even know what that is? It was established in 1911, if I remember correctly, by Teddy Roosevelt. So we would have bunker fuel to run our Navy. So now who's going to run our Navy? What, are they going to run bicycle power on our aircraft carriers? Well, they're nuclear, thank God. But there are many ships that run on bunker fuel. So we're going to have to buy the fuel from who? Ukraine? No! We'll go to Russia and ask them to sell us oil to run our Navy so we can fight China. That would be Joe Biden at his best.
Well, Dr. Savage, and to that point, we got to run. The Pentagon put out a press release about how they can walk and chew gum at the same time. That might be the case to them. For a lot of us, we think that they're pretty one-dimensional with the way things are going right now. Dr. Michael Savage, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Answers all the questions.
He really was ahead of his time many times. Dr. Savage, great to see you as always.
Joining me now is the host of the Michael Savage Show podcast, Dr. Michael Savage. Michael, great to see you after a couple weeks. I wish that we had a happier story for you to talk about today, but, 2 cops are dead because Gascon let a felon walk the streets.
Thanks for having me, Jen. Look, without law, there cannot be order. And Gascon, people don't understand this. They've forgotten. He destroyed San Francisco's DA office. He was thrown out of San Francisco, and he had people behind him, Jen, who brought him to LA, and he became the DA of Los Angeles with these nefarious, powerful billionaires in Los Angeles. How did Gascon go from destroying San Francisco's law and order to destroying LA's law and order? Without law, there cannot be order. There is an epidemic of cop killings in this country because of bastards like him, and I'm sorry to use such a strong word. We can't take this anymore. And the Bell of Liberty, does anyone remember this? The Bell of Liberty will be silenced if these left-wing fanatics funded by George Soros are not kicked out of office and put in prison themselves. There's something wrong with this picture, Jen. I want to know how a man who destroys a city like this great city that I live in, San Francisco, can get kicked out after destroying the SFPD, permitting lawlessness to run rampant in the streets, go to LA and get elected and do the same thing there and not wind up in prison. Never mind firing him. How does he get the job again? So you look at these two cops, these young guys. They go to a domestic violence call, which I've been told by police are the most dangerous of all police calls. And they are ambushed by this known gang member who has his gang allegiance tattooed on his face. Released by progressive Los Angeles criminal district attorney George Gascon. And all we can do is recall him, and he'll say whoops and go to work for some big corporation or go to work for some big law firm to do some more work for Black Lives Matter so they can keep bilking the public. Something's wrong here, Jen. Something's very wrong here.
Well, Michael, I was really hoping with the recall in your city that perhaps we'd see a domino effect in other cities with these liberal DAs. I mean, what's it going to take? How many people are going to have to die for us to see some change in this country, for liberals to say, you know what, enough is enough?
I don't have an answer for that. I don't understand how people don't put two and two together. If you're soft on crime, you're going to have more crime. If you're hard on criminals, you're going to have less crime. If you throw the book at these people, they can't kill again. If you let them out the next second, they will rape, murder, rob, and kill again. So what more can I say about it, Jen? What can you do when you see mobs like Black Lives Matter who burned 500 incidents of Black Lives Matter? None of them are in prison. How many people from the January 16th event, that witch hunt, are still in prison without habeas corpus? We have an upside-down country under Joe Biden and the radical left. There's no question about it. Biden has said nothing about the dead cops, has he? Has he come out and said anything, or is he too busy celebrating diversity? Remember what I said
When
many
he's
years
not
ago?
in Delaware. Right.
Yeah. Without law, there cannot be order. And we need tougher district attorneys. We need longer sentences. We need more prisons, not less prisons. I know that sounds like, what? What are you saying? We need more prisons, not less prisons. And we need more people in prison, not more people on the streets. Again, I have to go
And
back to
Michael,
my little... Yeah, the Bell of Liberty will stop be ringing. It will be silenced unless guys like Gascon are not only chased out of town, but actually tried for the crimes they've committed against our cities. That's right.
well,
Why did they get away
ask
with
you.
this and then walk away? Jen, how did they just walk away from this? How?
It makes no sense to me. And, you know, I wanted to talk to you, though, about San Francisco. We didn't get to. You mentioned Jan 6. We had to cover that Shan hearing last Thursday night, so we didn't see you. But I wanted to ask you how you think things are going now with this recall. Your mayor, London Breed, has to appoint an interim DA. Do you feel like there is going to be meaningful change in your city?
No. No. Here's my nightmare. London Breed herself is a product of the woke far left. The woman came out of the projects in the city, which unto itself should have educated her as to what crime actually is. So now she has the choice to put in a new DA. Do you think she will actually put someone in who's not like Boudin? She's liable to put someone in who's worse, but will be untouchable because it won't be a white male. Listen to what I just said. Wait till you see what she does now that she has this power. She's not going to pick some, let's say, strong on crime DA. She's going to pick another Chesa Boudin who's liable to be a transgender person of color who everyone will be afraid to say one word to. That's what I feel. Wait and see.
Michael, I'm really curious to dig into this more with you, and I think it's going to have to wait until next week or sometime thereafter. Michael, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you.
I love you. I love your show, and I love the city I live in. I can't believe what's happened to it. They've destroyed this city. George Soros is the man behind it all, Jen.
Indeed. Michael Savage, thank you.
Thank you.
Joining me now is the host of the Michael Savage podcast, the author of Our Fight for America, The War Continues, Dr. Michael Savage. Dr. Savage, great to have you with us, as always, on the count. So, this group called Ruth Sent Us, that definitely wasn't sent by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, they're organizing protests at Supreme Court justices' residences, and they're now honoring this legacy, as they see it, of Justice Ginsburg. What do you think of that? We know that she was a left-leaning judge, but it doesn't seem like she would have condoned the madness outside of homes and also threats on one of her colleagues' life.
Well, I can't speak for her. She was a terrible human being. I don't know how they have deified this woman. She never should have been appointed to the Supreme Court. We're going back to RBG. Remember, she had been the chief counsel for the radical left communist ACLU. That would be like taking a lawyer for the Ku Klux Klan and nominating that lawyer to the Supreme Court, and then having that Ku Klux Klan chief lawyer put on the Supreme Court in a vote of 96-4. The Republicans bent over backwards for Ginsburg. She was a lifetime Stalinist, and I have nothing but horrible things to say about her. She was a demon. So I wouldn't be surprised at what is going on today. It's a continuation of the hatred that has been unleashed by the Biden gang. We are, Logan, living in an age of pure hatred right now, in which the mental pollution that is being disseminated by the Biden gang is worse than any air pollution I've ever seen. The most accessible, and I'm reading from a book I wrote a few years ago, the opening, Stop Mass Hysteria. We're watching mass hysteria, Logan, aren't we? This hatred that is being disseminated by Biden and Pelosi is very clear. It's made for one reason only. It's to unify the broken left and forcing the average person to forget the horrors of what Biden has and is doing to this nation. Look at what they did. I don't know if you want to segue to what they did to Peter Navarro. I thought we were going to just mention that momentarily. Or we can go to the January 6th, the January 6th event. I want to be very clear. As I witnessed that occurring on television, I turned to my assistant. I said, this is total madness. This is terrible. This is wrong. Why are they breaking in? Why are they breaking windows? It didn't make sense to me. It was all wrong. But so far as I know, Logan, the instigators of that event have by and large been arrested and tried, and some of them are still in jail. So why now do they spend all of this political currency on what is the equivalent of, let us say, Mueller's Russia collusion failed, the Trump witch hunt failed, and go back to the Stalinist show trials and the Salem witch hunt? What are they doing to America? Whatever they are doing doesn't seem to be selling to the average American. And what they did to ex-Trump advisor Peter Navarro is beyond my wildest imagination. Putting a man of that stature in handcuffs and leg irons while being arrested at the Nashville airport on charges of defying the House January 6th committee. Fentanyl dealers in San Francisco are not treated that way, which is why the DA was tossed out in his dirty underwear, that son of terrorists, Chesa Boudin. He let fentanyl dealers, who are largely from Honduras, go because he did not want them to be arrested for selling drugs. Listen to this, why? Because they would have been deported, and he was opposed to deportation. Everyone knows what was going on in this city. And the majority of people in San Francisco who were very left-wing all got together and said, he's got to go. So all these left-wing policies that the Biden gang think are going to propel them into office again in the midterms are completely fraudulent. They're not. It's not selling. Take a look at the gas prices. Take a look at the cost of milk, chicken, eggs, and bread. And we've only seen the beginning, Logan. Wait until October, when the food crisis hits because of the disruption of the shipment of wheat and other foodstuffs coming out of Ukraine. Wait until the price of bread is $10 a loaf. And then you will see that the Stalinist show trials, the Salem witch hunt, and the Trump witch hunt that they're trying to reignite will go exactly where they belong, onto the ash can of history.
And Dr. Savage, as we were discussing with a previous guest, now Iran and Venezuela coming together to sell oil. We're still not drilling. We could be buying from Maduro and Khomeini at any time at this point. So, Dr. Michael Savage, thanks for being here. We appreciate your insight as always.
Thanks, Logan. Great show. Keep it up.
All right, thank you.
We're joined now by Michael Savage, host of the Michael Savage podcast and his weekly spot. He's also author of the book, Our Fight for America, The War Continues. So, Michael, expand upon that, if you would, about what's going on with NASCAR.
Bob, thanks for having me. The other day I was on Newsmax on Thursday night, and I said we've gone from, in China, the Red Guard to the Rainbow Guard. And I wasn't kidding. They're sort of a terrorist group where either you bend the knee to them or you're out of business. That's what's going on. Everyone has to bend, whether it's at a school board meeting or a corporation. It's called cancel on one level. But I want to look into it in a little more detail, which I did for this show today. And I have discovered what I sort of knew these youth enforcers were. They're bullies. And it's going back to the old phrase of the 70s, radical feminism. It's an old phrase by now. At its core, according to their own literature, radical feminists, and I'll quote now, rather than seeing men as the core source of women's oppression, they wrote, we must identify class society as the culprit. Fighting capitalism remains the only path towards women's full liberation. Now you say, well, what does it have to do with NASCAR? The stated goal of RadFems, or Big Sis, as I called them 10 years ago, is the overthrow of the capitalist system. So after 50 years of bullying society, falsely accusing men, they've conquered the educational, possibly the military and commercial worlds, and now they've decided to use their new sacred cows, the trans community, to batter our great society into submission. They attack parents and the nuclear family. Already we have seen BLM has crooked, lying leadership. It came out with the houses that they bought. They ran off with the money, but they're avowed anti-capitalists. And look how well they have done at BLM. Anti-capitalist. Yeah. So what's next for this
I don't mean to interrupt you, Michael, but I agree with the fact that there are a lot of people who look at our capitalist system and don't realize that's what has made us who we are. That strength of the capitalist, the free enterprise system. And it seems to me, maybe I'm wrong on this, but they think it should be more socialist. Yet socialism doesn't have a great track record of creativity, of creating the next iPhone or the next internet, that sort of thing.
But Bob, this is the crazy part of it all to me. They're anti-capitalist gay women in BLM, and they bought mansions with the money that they allegedly raised for poor black people and for the minority community. They're thieves. They're crooked. They're like Al Capone. This is one man's opinion. I'm not saying it's Newsmax's opinion. So what's next? Bob, I like to look forward and backward. What's next is religion. Religion is more or less under their thumb already. So what's next? Already Big Sis has called Christianity a white supremacy trick to suppress people of color. They've smeared all Catholic priests as child molesters when it's about 6 or 7% at most. So what's left for them to tear down Western civilization when the core of Western civilization happens to be Judaism and Christianity. So next, God will be attacked as a construct of white supremacists to subjugate women and people of color. And mark my words, whether it's sooner or later, eventually this will lead to attacks on Judaism and Jews who gave the world the concept of one God and the Ten Commandments. It's all going to go back to that. I know people say, what the heck is he talking about? What does it have to do with race cars and racetracks? I looked into it and I could see the connection, okay, in my mind. Call me crazy, Bob, but I see the connection.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I think a lot of people see these things going that the focus on the dynamics coming from that political perspective is so outweighing what people's experiences are, and that's, I think that's a part of what you're saying, and I also look at what's happening to the unappreciation, that's not the right word for it, but the fact that people don't appreciate free enterprise and capitalism, as imperfect as they are because human beings are involved, is part of what makes us a strong country.
Right, but the thing is radical feminism and this whole movement against, let's say, NASCAR, that's a tip of the iceberg.
Okay,
They're
tie it up here, Michael.
They'd like to eliminate NASCAR. They'd like to take down any images that are based upon, in their mind, the patriarchy, and car racing is generally run by men. I know there are some women drivers who are very good. I remember meeting one of them at a track when my son had a race car out there. But the fact of the matter is they want to tear it all down. And the core of it all is the male. The patriarchy is what they are after, and NASCAR represents the patriarchy. And now they are using the trans community as the battering ram, in plain English.
Okay, Michael, here we are, two old white guys talking about this, though. You know how everybody looks at that and says, oh, we just don't get it.